Well, as you guys know, the Kia Carnival is our reigning People Mover of the Year, and with very good reason, Sam. This is a very, very clever vehicle, isn't it?
It is, mate, and I've got to say I'm really sad that we're going to be seeing an end to this long-term loan because I've really liked this car. I mean, I think people probably assume that you'd probably fall in love with the sports cars and the top end of town, the luxury stuff, but this has been one of my absolute favourite cars. It's absolutely stolen my heart, this thing, as we've had it.
Very handy, very practical, and as you said, you can be bombing around town in a Porsche 911, and sure, that's fun, but this is a hell of a lot more useful day to day. And that's what we've taken a look at over the last 6 months that we've had the Carnival in the garage. In a minute, you're going to take a look at interior practicality and family friendliness.
And there's a lot to get through.
There's a fair bit to get through. I'll have a look at the design element of it. But the idea with our long-term fleet is that we spend more time with the car, obviously, and we start to delve into the reasons that we think this is as good as it is. And I think in the fullness of time, this has continued to impress us, right?
Yeah, there's been a few niggles. No car is perfect, I suppose, and there has been a few things that have turned up in that 6 months. I think they always do over that period of time, but overall, this is really solid. I think it's about a car that doesn't try and do everything well, it just does one core job, and that's a people mover, and it just knocks it out of the park.
Does it really well. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take a closer look at why we tell so many people who are trying to squeeze their kids into a 3-row SUV, they should in fact be buying something like the Kia Carnival. The Kia Carnival has been our pick of the People Mover segment for some time now, and despite newer competition, that remains the case. Chief among the new brigade is the Staria from sister brand Hyundai, itself an excellent and effective people mover. Don't forget Toyota's Granvia, the Tarago replacement, which is solid but can't quite match up to the Carnival in an overall sense. Where Carnival pips both the Hyundai and Toyota is in terms of driving dynamics. It's less bus-like and much more SUV-like. Our long-termer is the range-topping diesel variant. Kia has been clever with the Carnival too, with both petrol and diesel engines available, but remember, there is no all-wheel drive. Both engine variants feature front-wheel drive only. The Carnival range starts from $50,890 drive away for the S petrol and tops out with our Platinum diesel, which costs $70,790 drive away at the time of testing. Standard specification highlights include 19-inch alloy wheels, leather-appointed trim, 12-way adjustable driver's seat, 8-way adjustable passenger seat, sliding and reclining second row, fold-down tables, third-row seats which fold flat into the floor, shift-by-wire rotary dial, USB power across all 3 rows, 9 cup holders, 4 bottle holders, a 12.3-inch colour touchscreen, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, air conditioning vents into the 3rd row, heated and ventilated front seats, heated second row seats, and sunshade blinds in the 2nd and 3rd rows. Australians like to talk about how we are practical and we're budget conscious, but let's face it, one of the main reasons that we buy a car is what it looks like, the styling. I reckon you could argue the case that the Kia Carnival looks like an SUV more than it does a people mover from just about every angle, but it's here at the front of the car that I think that's most evident. The styling of this doesn't look like a bus at all. It's not slab-nosed. It's got the engine at the front of the vehicle like a conventional SUV would have, and you sit behind it. So it's a lot more practical, but it also looks good too. I think the styling across the front here, this is the Platinum, it looks really sharp and it's undeniably attractive. It's very hard to argue when you stand here at the front of the Carnival that it's not a good looking people mover. We're obviously talking about how attractive the Carnival is, and we're going back over some of the same territory, but it's here along the side of the car that I think that's evidence as well. A lot of people hate sliding doors. This has obviously got them, but they don't look too in your face. So for mums and dads out there who go, oh, I don't want to drive a bus because it's got sliding doors, you can buy a Kia Carnival and not feel like you're driving a bus.
A quick refresher on this Kia Carnival and why we think it is such a good option for the Australian family. Number one, it's got so much space and versatility on the inside. It's more about the 2nd row and the 3rd row, but up front here, it is really comfortable and versatile as well. There's lots of storage, center console's big, you got lots of cup holders, power outlets. This has a wireless phone charger in this specification, and overall, the presentation is really nice. I like how this looks in here. But enough about all of that stuff and a little bit more about the lived experience that we've had with this Carnival over the past few months. And probably the biggest thing was issues with the infotainment display here. It's a big display, it's a pretty good operating system, but it was glitchy there for a little while. Sometimes it would turn off, sometimes it was unresponsive, and the phone call quality was bad at times as well. We got onto Kia, we spoke to them about it, went to the dealership for a few hours and they reflashed it or did something, and those problems did go away. So now with all of those problems sorted out, this infotainment display does have some cool functionality going on. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, digital radio, native navigation, all that stuff. But you've also got this thing called quiet mode. You press that, you've got kids asleep in the back, or maybe it's your friends or family, whatever it is. It kills all the sound in the back and only pipes sound into the front here and caps it as well. So this won't be waking anyone up with a surprise. And you've also got passenger talk. That's a cool one. It pretty much uses the microphone up the front here and it pipes your voice into the third row.
So if your kids are having a Barney in the back, you can actually talk to them without screaming the house down from the front seat using the speakers. It's actually really quite handy.
One of the things that probably isn't very handy is this thing called Sounds of Nature. So it's almost like a white noise function, and it's got warm fireplace, snowy village, there's a few different things there, and it's meant to calm you down, I suppose. I'm not so sure, but I can say I've never actually used this, and I'm not sure of a situation where I would either. There's one in particular called Open Air Cafe. I used to work in hospitality, and that kind of sends shivers down my spine. I'm worried that someone's going to start screaming at me for missing their meal or something. I just give it a miss. This top specification Carnival comes with a rotary dial instead of a traditional gear shifter, and after spending some time with this, I absolutely love it. It's actually really easy to use and probably easier than a normal traditional shifter. You simply twist it to the right, it's in drive. You twist it to the left, it's in reverse. You never really use neutral in this car, so that's a little bit redundant. And then you just press the button on the top and it's in park. Dead easy. Now, one thing to note about this Carnival, this is top spec, but it is missing a couple of things because of the coronavirus and because of the chip shortage around the world at the moment. Number one, it hasn't got auto wipers. That is a little bit of a shame. Kia just couldn't get it through in the development stage, and they just wanted to get this car out onto the showroom floors and not delay it anymore. So it's missing that, and it's also missing something up the front here, and that's a digital instrument cluster. Things like the Kia Sorento and the Hyundai Palisade have it. It gives you more functionality up the front here, and it's also got that cool function where you put your indicators on and it gives you the little camera readout on each side. That is good. This car is missing it, and it is coming, but it's one of those things that's just been delayed. So if you do want that, maybe shop around. But in my experience, you don't really need it at the same time. This is good, you've got good visibility, you've got blind spot monitoring, you could see it as overkill, and this is good enough. But enough about the front row, it's time to get to the business end of this review, and that is in the second and third rows of this Carnival. One thing I do like, you've got controls for those sliding doors on your remote. You've also got them down by your knee here up the front, and there are buttons on each B pillar, so you've got lots of functionality there. Let's open it up and have a look. As you can see here, this is how I've got it for my family usage. I've got two little kids, they're still in baby seats, and quite frankly, this is massive overkill for this size family. This car can handle so much more than this. So I'm gonna take the seats out and show you just how functional this is. All right, those baby seats are out of the way. And the first thing I wanna show you in this Carnival is the amount of space you got on offer. That's my driving position up front there. Now I'll show you what a medium-sized SUV would probably look like. It would be maybe around about that. I'd call that a solid pass mark. Even some large SUVs, they might be around there or something. Not that good necessarily, but pretty good. This Carnival, however, I'll put it all the way back. Look at that, there is acres of space. You've got like limousine levels of room in terms of leg room, and headroom is really good also. This thing just blows everything out of the water in that regard. Now, I'll pop this down. I've got a bit of an armrest there, I've got cup holders. You can remove this seat completely, you can flip it around the other way. I did take this out at one stage. It's a little bit fiddly to do, but you can do it. So if you've got baby seats fitted to the outboard seats in the second row here, and you don't want kids fighting over who's in the third row, how to get in there, climbing over the place, you take this seat out and people can walk through into the third row, and you can fit 3 people in the back there as well, so it's supremely functional. A couple of things we've noticed during this long-term test is that these doors, opening and closing them, can be a little bit fiddly sometimes. Sometimes you'll press it to close and they just won't, so you'll start to drive off and it will beep at you and do all kinds of crazy things, so you've got to stop and do that. It hasn't happened very often, but it has happened. A small thing to keep an eye on. And another thing for me, I've actually got a good example just here. There's a tiny teddy on the ground. Kids always having snacks in the car. The problem is, because you've got these rails and that good sliding functionality, these teddies can literally drop into those rails, and then it's a bit tricky to get them out. We've actually found the best way to do it is a couple of chopsticks, and you've got to sit there and pull all of the stuff out that falls in. It's not the end of the world, but it can be a little bit annoying, especially if your kids are a little bit grotty like mine. A few last things to mention in the second row of this Carnival. You've got one 12-volt outlet there, and you've also got USB points on the back of each seat, so no dramas there in terms of power outlets. I really love the sun blinds in the second row. There are some in the third row as well, but another little detail is just the size of the window in here. It actually opens up quite a long way, and it's just nice to have that much open air and breeze, especially on a longer drive. I really like that. Access to the third row, I'll be honest, it's probably not as good as the previous generation Carnival. There is one lever here, a little bit heavy, you've got to give it a decent pull, and that's the access there. It's not too bad. And once you pop in there, this third row, I'll pull this seat back as well. Now that is in its furthest backmost position, and I've got decent leg room. Headroom is slightly tight, but it's not too bad. This is definitely better than most other third rows in the segment. If I was going to move that second row forward slightly, they've got acres of space up there. You could easily fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 adults. You've got a third seat in the middle in the back here. That's probably more suitable for kids. This does seat 8 overall, however, and I've got to say it does it really well. You've got cup holders here, you've got USB points, you've even got tiny little cute sun blinds in the back here as well, air vents. There's nothing really you can complain about in the back of this Carnival. This Carnival has always been a really popular choice at Drive, especially during our bigger shoots. Stuff like Drive Car of the Year, we've got a big crew, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We always try and get one of these so we can haul everyone around in comfort, but we can also haul around a lot of gear at the same time, because even though this third row is up, that boot does have a cool party trick happening. Let me show you. Generally speaking, if you've got a 3-row, 7 or 8 seat car, if you're using that third row for people, you've got less room for storage and stuff in the back, but that is not the case here with the Carnival. It's got a really smart design, and it's because this is only a front wheel drive car. It's not all wheel drive. It doesn't have to worry about things like differentials, prop shafts in the back here. It can dedicate as much room as possible to storage space. So you pop that third row up, and this boot actually drops down a really long way. It's quite big. I'll just show you. These seats I pulled out before, they pop in really easily, and there is room to burn here. I can't think of another car that can fit 8 people inside and still have that much boot space overall. It's really good. Another small detail I found when I was using this car daily, these little shelves on the side here. It's a small detail, but it's really handy. I've got baby wipes in there at the moment. We shove baby wipes and nappies and snacks and all that general stuff you might forget sometimes. It's always in the car, ready to go. Just another nice little detail for a family car.
Like all of our long-term test vehicles, we make sure that everyone across the senior editorial team spends time in the vehicles, and the Carnival was no different. It impressed everyone who drove it. The turbocharged diesel 4-cylinder engine makes 148 kilowatts and 440 newton meters and drives through an 8-speed automatic gearbox to the front wheels. The ADR fuel claim on the combined cycle is an impressive 6.5 litres per 100 kilometres. Read our long-term updates to find out exactly how much diesel we used under various driving scenarios. First of all, let's talk about fuel consumption, or specifically the lack thereof. This thing is absolutely ridiculous. Accumulated info for this test vehicle. Now, we've had it for just over 6,000 kilometres. So over the last 6,243 kilometres to be exact, this has averaged 7.7 litres per 100. Now that is completely ridiculous. It's unbelievable that a vehicle of this size, of this practicality, can use such a small amount of fuel, especially when you take into account the fact that we haven't really tried to be efficient while driving it. We've just driven it regularly like any average user would. That is amazing. I've recently test driven the new Staria, and there's no doubt that it is a particularly impressive people mover, but there's also no doubt that it's a lot more van-like than the Kia Carnival. So while the Hyundai is on an SUV platform, it looks and feels a lot more like a van to drive than the Carnival does. That's not the only reason though that the Carnival beats it overall as a people mover. I think it's more flexible inside the cabin, the Carnival that is. I think the way that you can move the seats around is more flexible. It is more enjoyable to drive. I really do get that sense. Even though the Staria is good, I think this is one level above that. And then of course the other factor that this vehicle is just so good at is the way that it almost pretends to be an SUV. It's very un-people mover-like in every sense. I know we keep saying it, but that is a factor, and it's very much more like an SUV.
One of the first things to talk about with this Carnival for me driving it is the fact that it is a really big car. This generation Carnival is larger than the previous generation. Overall length is more than 5.1 meters, and the wheelbase is really big as well. It's over 3 meters. That's actually bigger than a Mitsubishi Triton, I'm pretty sure. So you tend to feel that when you're driving around. Turning circle isn't too bad, but just because the car is so long, if you're not careful, you might pick up a rear wheel on a curb or something like that. You get used to it, it's not a big deal, but it's definitely worth noting. Another big implication for a car like this, when it is this long and has such a long wheelbase, when you're going to be driving around town, you're going to have to park it from time to time. And I'll just do a little park now, reverse parallel, normally the trickiest one. It actually isn't, it's not too tight this, but it's a big car, so you can't fit it into spaces that other cars will fit. And you do have to do a bit of planning, but the good thing here is it's got a great 360-degree camera. That mirror dips down as well, so you can keep an eye on the curb. All right. There you go. This thing isn't going to fit in small spaces like a Picanto or even a medium-sized SUV for that matter, but because you've got good controls here, you can see what's going on. It's actually not as bad as you think.
I have a confession to make. At last year's Drive Car of the Year, I was angling for the Kia Carnival to win the overall award. During our time with the car, I did about 2,000 kilometres in the Kia Carnival, including a long country drive. And during that trip, I was blown away by the fuel economy. It was getting into the high 6s and low 7s litres per 100 Ks. Clearly it's not a sports car, but the sleek body and the low centre of gravity means it doesn't drive like a family bus. I know a lot of people may not pay much attention to the type of tyres that are fitted to a people mover, but to me the Continentals were the finishing touch to deliver that road holding. Of course, it's not all roses. Not all of us were a fan of the rotator dial instead of a conventional gear stick. And as with a lot of cars, the lane keeping technology could be a bit intrusive. I can't speak for the others, but I know I almost wore out this button on the steering wheel trying to disable it every time I got in the car.
There's an extensive suite of standard safety equipment. If the kids attempt to open the sliding side doors in an unsafe situation, there's an override system that prevents the doors from opening. That's a handy one for kids or parents who accidentally bump the button. Active and passive safety is taken care of, and Carnival gets a full 5-star ANCAP safety rating. Traction control, anti-lock brakes with autonomous emergency braking, brake force distribution and hill start assist are all standard. So are front and rear parking sensors, an excellent rear view camera, LED lights and other features that make the Carnival such a practical family vehicle. The full safety specification list is in our pricing and spec guide. Carnival is covered by a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, along with a capped price servicing scheme for the same period. You'll need a service every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, and they average out to just over $522 per year for a total of $3,657 over the first 7 years of ownership. Okay Sam, final thoughts on the Kia Carnival. I know you're a big fan, as I am. Tell us why.
I'm a massive fan of this car, and I think it just comes down to the fact that this is trying to do one thing really well instead of trying to have lots of irons in the fire like an SUV might. It's only front-wheel drive, and that means the floor doesn't have to worry about prop shafts, transmission tunnels, all those sorts of things. And the floor is flat, the seats slide, they move this way and that way. There's just a ridiculous amount of space in this thing. Second row, third row boot, it's all practically in a league of its own in terms of space overall. And for a family car, that reigns supreme. So if you're driving an SUV, chances are you might be better off in one of them.
And that's the point there. This is unequivocally the best people mover in the category for us, and that's in the face of newer competition. It saw off the new Granvia last year, and now it's seen off Staria as well. So for us, it remains at the top of the pile. Now, in the comments section below, let us know if you needed to move 3 or 4 kids, would you, like us, be buying a Kia Carnival rather than a 3-row SUV? And if you wouldn't, tell us why you wouldn't.
Pro tip, it's this one, mate.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't forget to hit like if you've enjoyed the video, and click on subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of our latest video content.
And if you want to dig into that SUV versus people mover argument even more, check out this video here. It is Carnival versus Palisade, and we get through a lot of detail in that.
Absolutely. And if you want to see the newest competition, click up there and you can have a look at my video review of the new Hyundai Staria.